Hello, everyone. Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. Nice to see you all again. We will start the evening with the Nandamātā. Feel free to chant along if you like. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, as usual for the evening program, we will start the program with a 30-minute meditation. And I see more people are joining. Welcome to everybody who is joining in and who is typing in the chat. And also welcome to everybody who is just watching and not typing in the chat. So, some of you might know that at the moment we are having a retreat at Empty Cloud Monastery. So the other monastics and all our lay visitors are actually on retreat at the moment. And they're also having a meditation session right now. And the retreat that we are having is a Samadhi retreat. So a retreat where we try to develop deep stillness, deep concentration of the mind. So for this evening's meditation session, I am planning also to do a stillness meditation. So I'm not going to give too many instructions. I will just guide you a little bit at the beginning. And then I will let you do your own meditation so that you can really go very deep into the stillness and you don't have my commentary all the time. And if you have trouble going into the stillness, then you can direct your mind to all the other meditators at Empty Cloud or the other retreatants who have practiced now for this whole week and who are meditating with us at the moment. And maybe you can tune into their energy and feel the stillness a little bit more. So let's get started. Sit in a comfortable position. Close your eyes. Find a position where your body can be in stillness for the next 30 minutes. Direct your mind to the breath. Just focus on your breathing for a little while. Let go of all the external distractions. Let go of all your busyness and come into the here and now, this present moment. Come into your body. And let go of all the thoughts, all the emotions that may be running through your mind. Just focus on your breathing. Let go of all the contents that may still be in your mind. And let your mind rest in the peace and in the stillness. If you want, you can keep on focusing on the breath, if that is a good meditation subject for you. Otherwise, pick another samadhi object that you're comfortable with. Just focus your mind on that and let it drop deeper and deeper into a state of calm, into a state of peace. And we're slowly coming towards the end of our meditation. Let go of the peace, let go of the stillness. And if your attention is not on the breath, then direct it back to the breath. Follow the breath for a few cycles of in-breath and out-breath. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So, welcome back everyone. I hope you had a peaceful meditation, and I hope you were able to join in and connect with our Samadhi retreat that we are having at the moment. I hope you were able to feel the peace of the retreat a little bit in your meditation just now. This evening, we will continue our series of 4 talks about the role models, the 4 chief lay disciples, the 2 lay disciples, chief lay disciples on the female side, which are Kuchuttara and Nandamātā, and the 2 on the male side, which are Chitta the householder and Hataka of Alavi. And we've talked about Kuchuttara this morning, and now we are talking about Nandamātā. And Nandamātā, her name is often given as Vilukantaki Nandamātā. So Vilukantaki is not actually her first name, her given name. Vilukantaki means from the village or from the place of Vilukanta. So there's a place called Vilukanta, and she is living there. And Nandamātā, of course, means mother of Nanda. So she has a son, her only child, and he is called Nanda. And she doesn't appear very often in the suttas, but unlike Kuchuttara, she actually has 2 suttas where she does appear. One sutta that goes where she's the main character, and that goes into a lot of detail about her practice and her life, which is what we're going to look at in just a minute. And then another sutta where the Buddha talks about her and about her qualities and uses that as the starting point to give a Dhamma talk. And if there's time, we will also look at that sutta tonight. She also appears in the list of the foremost lay disciples, the foremost female lay disciples. So I think most of you know that in the Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Wands, we have those lists of the foremost bhikkhunis, foremost bhikkhus, foremost bhikkhunis, foremost laymen, and foremost laywomen. So these are not necessarily the chief disciples, but they have a foremost quality, a quality in which they are outstanding, the most accomplished person in the Buddha's dispensation. And so Nandamātā appears there also, and there her name is Uttara Nandamātā. So Uttara seems to be her actual given name, and not Velukantaki. Velukantaki is just the place name, the name where she's from. And my personal opinion is that she is more well known as Velukantaki Nandamātā instead of as Uttara Nandamātā, because the other chief lay woman, Kuch Uttara, also has the given name Uttara. So Kuch Uttara also is Uttara, the humpbacked one. We talked about it this morning. And so because both of the chief female lay disciples are called Uttara, in order to distinguish them more, I think Nandamātā became more well known as Velukantaki Nandamātā. So Nandamātā from Vilukanta. And in that list of foremost disciples, she is known as the one foremost in the practice of jhana, so deep absorption practice. And again, that ties in very well with something I mentioned this morning also, that those pairs of chief disciples, there's always one who has a wisdom quality and one who has a deep samadhi quality. So this pair of insight practice and samadhi practice is something that we also find embodied in the chief disciples. So Kuch Uttara, whom we looked at this morning, had a strong wisdom quality, and now Nandamātā, she is foremost in the practice of jhana. So this is a samadhi practice. And she also has the psychic powers, which we will see in her sutta in just a moment. So the sutta we are looking at now is in the Anguttara Nikaya, and this is number 7.53. There is a link in the live chat and also a link in the description box. So if you want to read along, you can do that. And I'm reading from the version on Sutta Central, translated by Bhante Sujato. So this sutta is called Nandamātā Sutta, or Nanda's mother, and it begins as follows. So I have heard, at one time the Venerable Sariputta and Mahamoggallana were wandering in the southern hills together with a large sangha of mendicants. So from the start, we see that this is a very special sutta because so many of the chief disciples feature in this sutta. We have Sariputta and Mahamoggallana, who are, of course, the Bhikkhu chief disciples, and then we have Nandamātā. So it's very special to have so many chief disciples come together. And they are wandering in the southern hills. Some people might be more familiar with the Pali name of this place, which is Dakkinagiri. So if you have heard of Dakkinagiri, this is translated as Southern Hills here. Now, at that time, the laywoman Velukantaki, Nanda's mother, rose at the crack of dawn and recited the verses of the way to the beyond. So we see here that Bhante Sujato has translated this as though Velukantaki was her actual name. As I just mentioned, her real name is Uttara. And we will see in just a minute as we continue reading the sutta that Velukantaki actually refers to the place where she is living. So that will come up in just a moment. So I think this is a slightly inaccurate translation here. But we see her practice of getting up very, very early, rising at the crack of dawn, and then spending the first time, maybe a few hours or 1 hour, it's not clear, but spending a significant amount of time on her Dhamma practice and reciting the verses of the way to the beyond. So the way to the beyond in Pali is called the Parayana. And the Parayana is one of the very, very earliest collections of suttas in the Buddhist tradition. So even during the lifetime of the Buddha, that was already considered early, and it's often referenced in other suttas. We know that many monastics and lay people had memorized this entire collection, so it was very popular. And we still have that collection nowadays. The Parayana is one of the 5 chapters in a text called the Sutta Nipata, and the Sutta Nipata can be found in the Khuddaka Nikaya. And so the Sutta Nipata has 5 chapters, and 2 of them are particularly early. Like the entire Sutta Nipata appears to be very, very early, but 2 of them are particularly early and are often referenced in other suttas. One of them is this Parayana, and the other one is called Atthakavaka. And so this Parayana is quite a sizable text. It has 16 suttas, plus 1 introduction that is also quite long, and 2 stories that tell us what happened after those 16 suttas were spoken. So those 16 suttas are spoken to 16 different people that all came together to the Buddha with questions. and how afterwards, how they practiced afterwards and what happened to them afterwards. So the text is quite significant. It's not a tiny text. And we see that Nandamātā also had memorized this entire text. And if you remember this morning, we were talking about Kuchuttara, and she had memorized 112 suttas from the Itivuttaka, the entire Itivuttaka collection. And tomorrow, when we're talking about Chitta, the householder, we will also see he had a lot of texts memorized. So this is a recurring feature among the chief disciples, that they were really deeply learned in the Dhamma and that they had a huge amount of knowledge. And maybe this is something that we can also aspire to. So those of you who maybe haven't memorized that much yet, maybe this is a good time to be inspired and to start a little bit, do a daily practice of chanting and learning scriptures. So she was reciting this Parayana, and at that time the great king Vissavana was on his way from the north to the south on some business. So the great king Vissavana is one of the 4 great kings. So he is a king of the gods, he is not a human king. And he heard Nanda's mother reciting and stood waiting for her to finish. So as he was traveling, he heard the recitation of the Parayana and he was very inspired. So he stopped, and he was stopped at her place and was listening to her chanting. And then when her recital was over, she fell silent. Then, knowing she had finished, Vissavana applauded, saying, good sister, so sadhu, sadhu. And as I mentioned, Nandamātā has psychic powers, so she can see and hear those like spirits and gods. And she says, so she can hear what he's saying, and she says, but who might you be, my dear? And the king says, sister, I am your brother, Vissavana, the great king. So here we see the king doesn't say, well, I'm this mighty king. He actually relates to her like sister and brother, like they're on the same level, because both of them are followers of the Buddha. And then she says, oh, good, my dear. Then may my recital of the teaching be my offering to you as my guest. So this is something that is common back then. It's even in modern times still common. We are hospitable, we practice hospitality. So if there's a guest, we try to give them something. Usually we offer them a drink or we offer them some food. But of course, as a human, you cannot offer drink and food to a non-human being because they cannot eat human food. So she's offering this recital of the teaching to him as a sign of her hospitality. And he rejoices and says, good sister, and let this also be your offering to me as your guest. So he's asking for another favor, and he says, tomorrow the mendicant Sangha, headed by Sariputta and Moggallana, will arrive at Velukanta before breakfast. So here we see Velukanta is a place name, the place where Nandamātā is living. That's why she's called Velukantaki. So it's definitely not her given name. And when you've served the Sangha, please dedicate the religious donation to me. Then that will also be your offering to me as your guest. So now the great king Vissavana is informing Nandamātā that the Sangha is coming and will arrive the next morning. And he's asking for her to prepare a meal for them and to share the merit with him. And so when the night had passed, so this is the next night. So we know Nandamātā had just gotten up at the crack of dawn. Now one day passes, and now we're talking about the next night. When the next night had passed, the laywoman Nanda's mother had a variety of delicious foods prepared in her own home. Then the Sangha of mendicants headed by Sariputta and Moggallana arrived at Velukanta. Then Nanda's mother addressed the man, please, mister, go to the monastery and announce the time to the Sangha, saying, sirs, it's time. The meal is ready at the home of the lady Nanda's mother. Yes, ma'am, that man replied, and he did as she said. And then the Sangha of mendicants, headed by Sariputta and Moggallana, robed up in the morning and taking the bowls and robes, went to the home of Nanda's mother, where they sat on the seats spread out. Then Nanda's mother served and satisfied them with her own hands with a variety of delicious foods. And when Sariputta had eaten and washed his hand and bowl, Nanda's mother sat down to one side, and Sariputta said to her, "Nanda's mother, who told you that the Sangha of mendicants was about to arrive?" So Sariputta is surprised because they've just arrived. By normal means, it shouldn't have been possible for her to know that they're there and to prepare this sumptuous meal. So he's curious, how did she know that the Sangha is there? And she says, "Sir, last night I rose at the crack of dawn and recited the verses of the way to the beyond, the Parayana. And then I fell silent. Then the great king Vessavana, knowing I had finished, applauded me. 'Good sister, good sister.' I asked, 'Who might you be, my dear?' 'Sister, I am your brother, Vessavana, the great king.'" So now she's just repeating the entire conversation that's going on. The king says, "Good, my dear." The king says, "Sister, I'm your brother, Vessavana, the great king." And she says, "Good, my dear. Then may my recital of the teaching be my offering to you as my guest." "Good, sister, and let this also be your offering to me as your guest. Tomorrow, the mendicant Sangha, headed by Sariputta and Moggallana, will arrive at Vilokanta before breakfast. When you have served the Sangha, please dedicate the religious donation to me. Then that will also be your offering to me as your guest. And so, sir, may the merit and the growth of merit in this gift be for the happiness of the great King Vessavana." So she's now actually doing the dedication of merit and sharing the merit with the great King Vessavana, just as he asked. Because he has done her this great favor of letting her know that the Sangha is coming so she can invite them. And Sariputta rejoices and he says, "It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing that you converse face to face with a mighty and illustrious God like the great King Vessavana." So Sariputta rejoices in her ability, in her powers to be able to speak with the non-human beings. And that's remarkable because we know from other suttas that Sariputta himself, even though he was the chief disciple, he was the chief disciple in wisdom, not in psychic powers, so he did not have those abilities to speak with devas. And we know that from another sutta. And in that other sutta, it's actually quite a cute story. Sariputta is sitting somewhere and he's meditating, and there is an evil spirit, and he sneaks up to Sariputta and he takes out a huge club and he hits Sariputta over the head with this club. And Moggallana, who is close by, and Moggallana obviously has psychic powers, he is the foremost in psychic powers, so he sees what's going on. And he goes to Sariputta and he asks him if he's okay. And Sariputta is like, "Yeah, I'm okay. I just have a very slight headache. I'm not sure why." And so Moggallana says, "Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible how powerful and mighty you are, how many spiritual attainments you have. Because just now this spirit hit you over the head with a club and other people would have died, but you just have a slight headache because your spiritual powers are so strong." And Sariputta then says, "Wow, it's amazing, it's incredible, like how powerful and mighty you are, Moggallana, because you can see all these non-human beings and what they're doing, and I can't even see a tiny goblin, let alone such evil spirits." So Sariputta here confirms that he cannot actually see those non-human beings. But Nanda's mother here in this story, she can see them. And then she says to Sariputta, "Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There is another." So now the rest of the sutta will be all the amazing practices and qualities that Nandamātā has. And of course, she is not saying this to show off or to show that she's better than other people. This is just for inspiration, so that other people can feel inspired and try to emulate her and develop those qualities for themselves. So the first one that she mentions is as follows: I had an only son called Nanda, who I loved dearly. So this is why she's called Nandamātā, Nanda's mother. And the rulers forcibly abducted him on some pretext and had him executed. But I can't recall getting upset when my boy was under arrest or being arrested, imprisoned or being put in prison, killed or being killed. It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing that you purify even the arising of a thought. So here we have Nanda's mother, and she has only one single child. And she says that she loves him dearly. So it's not that she is indifferent to him or that they didn't have a good relationship. She did love him very much. But still, when he was abducted and when he was killed, her mind was so pure, her mind was so peaceful, so clear, that no anger or hatred arose in her mind when that happened. So it's not just that she didn't have a bodily reaction or a verbal reaction to this. Even in her mental states, she could control, or she not even control, but the mind was so pure that she no longer had a tendency for hatred to arise in her mind. So her practice is extremely strong, extremely deep here. And I think that is something that is very relatable, that is, and also very inspiring, because even in modern times, these kind of things can happen. Of course, similar things can happen, like our loved ones can be put into prison when they're innocent because there's some kind of mistake or some kind of mix-up or just some very malicious things going on. And we know, especially in the country where we are at the moment, in the US, we know that there's still the death penalty, and we know that people have been killed who were innocent. So these kind of things still happen even in modern times. But even if it's not that extreme, unpleasant things happen to us all the time. People are angry and taking it out on us or blaming us for something, or things don't go the way we want. Or our loved ones behave in a way that is disagreeable to us. So these kind of things happen all the time. So we have a lot of opportunity to practice in this way and to try and emulate Nanda's mother when she's able to not get upset when such things happen. So for us, usually the things happen on a smaller scale. Like usually it's not our only child that is being killed. Usually there's a smaller annoyance that happens. But still we can, when this happens, we can recall Nanda's mother, who had this extreme case. And so our much smaller cases should be a fertile ground for us to actually practice and try to emulate her and not give rise to anger and hatred when these kind of things happen. And then Nanda's mother continues, Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There is another. When my husband passed away, he was reborn in one of the realms of spirits, so as a yakka, and he revealed to me his previous life form, but I can't recall getting upset on that account. And Sariputta again rejoices and says, it's incredible, Nanda's mother, it's amazing that you purify even the arising of a thought. So here we have her husband, who also passed away. So it seems that Nanda's mother was actually the head of this household because she didn't have a husband, and also her son was dead. So she was a lady with considerable influence and authority. And now her husband apparently wasn't a particularly good person because he was reborn as a ghost, as a yakka. And he came to scare her. So he revealed to her the previous life form. So he came to her, he haunted her, he tried to scare her. But she didn't get upset, she didn't get scared. So again, her mind was so clear and so pure that it didn't give rise to any fear when this ghost came and tried to haunt her and to scare her. And then she says, "Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There's another. Ever since we were both young and I was given in marriage to my husband, I can't recall betraying him even in thought, still less indeed. It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing that you purify even the arising of a thought." So here again, Nanda's mother is pointing out how clear and pure her mind is. It's not just that she didn't betray her husband with a bodily act or with a verbal act by flirting with another man or another person, no matter the gender. But even in thought, there never arose a lustful thought towards another person in her. So we see how pure her mind was. There was no anger in the mind. There was no fear in the mind. And there was no lust in the mind. So all the major defilements are completely gone in her mind. And then she says, "Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There's another. Ever since I declared myself a lay follower, I can't recall deliberately breaking any precept. It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing." So here she is telling us that she's keeping all the precepts very purely. And so that means that she has accomplished the training in virtue. So of course, on the Buddha's path, we have 3 trainings, Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. The first one we accomplish or we purify is Sila. And once we become a stream enterer, then we are accomplished in the training in virtue. And the second one we accomplish or purify is the training in Samadhi. This refers usually to the 4 jhanas. And this is what we accomplish when we become anagamis, non-returners. And then the last training, the accomplishment in wisdom, is what we purify or finalize when we become arahants. So here now she is accomplished in Sila, and so we can assume that she's at least a stream enterer here. In a moment, we will see that she's actually much more than that. And then she says, "Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There's another. Whenever I want, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, I enter and remain in the first absorption." So this is the first jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. So placing the mind and keeping it connected, this is a translation for Vitakka Vichara, the translation that Bhante Sujato uses. Other translators have translated this as thought and examination. And of course, I think most people are familiar. There is a debate whether or not there's actually thinking in the first jhana, or whether the states in the first jhana are more subtle than that. So I'm not going to go into this at the moment because we're talking about Nandamātā, so this would lead us away from our topic tonight. But this is the stock passage for the first jhana. So she says that she has mastery over the first jhana. And then she continues, "As the placing of the mind and keeping it connected are stilled, so Vitakka and Vichara subside, I enter and remain in the second absorption." So this is the stock passage for the second absorption, then the third, and then the fourth. So she has mastery, complete mastery over all the 4 jhanas. And Sariputta says, "It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing." So now we see that she has also purified the training in Samadhi, not only in Sila, but also in Samadhi. And then she says, "Sir, this is not my only incredible and amazing quality. There is another. Of the 5 lower fetters taught by the Buddha, I don't see any that I haven't given up. It's incredible, Nanda's mother. It's amazing." So this declaration, to have given up the 5 lower fetters, this is obviously a statement that she has attained non-return, anagamiship. So saying that one has broken the 5 lower fetters is exactly equivalent to saying that one is an anagami, because the moment that you break the 5 lower fetters is the moment that you attain the state of anagami. This is equivalent. So I'm assuming that most people will be familiar with the idea of the fetters in Buddhism. In Buddhism, there are 10 fetters. 3 fetters are broken at stream entry, 2 more fetters are broken at non-return. So these are the 5 lower fetters, and then the 5 higher fetters are broken at arahantship. And the 3 fetters that are broken at stream entry are personality view, Sakaya Ditti, and the adherence to rites and rituals, or rules and observances, depending on how you want to translate it. And then, of course, doubt in the Buddha's teaching. These are the 3 fetters that we break at stream entry. And then at non-return, we completely overcome all attachment to the sensual realm and all anger and hatred. So these are the 2, the other 2 of the 5 lower fetters that we completely break. So at this point, we have no more attachment whatsoever to the sensual realm, and we cannot be reborn in the sensual realm anymore ever. That's why it's called a non-returner, because they do not return to the sensual realm. And if they don't progress to arahantship in this life, then they will be reborn in the fine material realm, the jhana realm. And for this reason, it is necessary for all non-returners to be accomplished in samadhi. So this is a given. When you are a non-returner, you have to be accomplished in samadhi. You have to have the jhanas, at least 1 jhana, so that you can actually be reborn, so that you actually can overcome the sensual realm and be reborn in the fine material realm, the jhana realm. It's technically possible that if you have the immaterial attainments, you could be reborn in an immaterial realm, but you can't actually make progress on the path there, because the states are too subtle for insight. So if you were to be reborn there, you'd eventually fall back, like that lifetime would come to an end, you'd fall back into a jhana realm and progress there, and to arahantship. And so usually non-returners are reborn in what is called the pure abodes, and the pure abodes are states or are levels or realms on the level of the 4th jhana, and most non-returners will be reborn there. And this is a place where only non-returners can be reborn, the pure abodes, because your mind is so pure, needs to be very, very pure in order to be reborn there. And then finally, the Venerable Sariputta educated, encouraged, fired up, and inspired Nanda's mother with a Dhamma talk, after which he got up from his seat and left. So this is the sutta about Nanda's mother. This is actually the only sutta where she features prominently. As we have talked about before, there are not very many suttas that feature the women, especially the lay women. We still have like a few suttas that feature bhikkhunis, but for lay women, it's really not much. So this is the only sutta where Nandamātā features prominently or appears herself. And there is one more sutta where the Buddha speaks about her. So we're going to have a brief look at that one too. And this is also in the Anguttara Nikaya, 6.37. And this is called a gift with 6 factors. There are links in the usual places. So if you want to read along, then you should find it there. So this sutta here is actually about the event that we just read about. So about this invitation that Nandamātā gives to the large Sangha headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. And the Buddha is not there. The Buddha is in another place. And but with his clairvoyance, with his divine eye, he can see what's going on. And he also thinks this is a very remarkable occasion because 3 chief disciples come together. So all these very, very pure people interact with each other. So he tells the mendicants, the monastics, what's going on. And he uses this as an occasion to give a little Dhamma teaching. And this is the sutta that we are reading now, a gift with 6 factors. And the sutta begins. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. So the Buddha is very far away. He's not in Velukanta, he's in Savatthi. Now, at that time, Nanda's mother from Velukanta was preparing a religious donation for the mendicant Sangha headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. The Buddha saw her doing this with his clairvoyance that is purified and superhuman, and he addressed the mendicants. This Nanda's mother from Velukanta is preparing a religious donation for the mendicant Sangha headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. And here in this little passage, this little paragraph, or this little sentence, there's actually a translation mistake. And there's one word that was forgotten and that hasn't been translated. And in Pali, this is Chalanga Samana Gatang, and means endowed with 6 factors or having 6 factors. So what this phrase should actually say, this Nanda's mother from Velukanta is preparing a religious donation having 6 factors for the mendicant Sangha headed by Sariputta and Moggallana. And how does a religious donation have 6 factors? So here the Buddha is teaching how to make an offering that is the most meritorious, the most pure. So for people who want to make the most merit with their offering, this is what you should know. This is what you should observe. And the Buddha says there are 3 factors. 3 factors apply to the donor and 3 to the recipient. What 3 factors apply to the donor? It's when a donor is in a good mood before giving. While giving, they feel confident, and after giving, they are uplifted. These 3 factors apply to the donor. What 3 factors apply to the recipients? It's when the recipients are free of greed, hate, and delusion, or practicing to be free of them. These 3 factors apply to the recipients. Thus, 3 factors apply to the donor and 3 to the recipients. That's how a religious donation has 6 factors. So here the Buddha is teaching us about how to make the most pure offering, and there are 6 factors that come into play. And 3 of them, of course, need to be put in place by the giver, and 3 of them need to be put in place by the recipient. So no single person can actually make a pure offering by themselves. You can only make the most pure offering by finding a counterpart that has the other 3 factors. So if you make sure that you have your own 3, still you're not totally in control. You have to find a good counterpart. If you're the donor, you have to find, in order to make a pure offering, you have to find a good recipient. So of course, all kinds of offerings are very, very meritorious. The Buddha said, even if you give to an animal, that merit will come back to you 100-fold. Even if you give to an immoral person, that merit will come back to you 1,000-fold. But if you just want to make the purest offering, then like with the most merit, then this is how you should do it. So if you are on the donor side, then while you're preparing the offering or while you're thinking about making that offering, you need to be in good spirits. Your mind should be uplifted. You should reflect properly. You should see that this is a wholesome thing to do, a beneficial thing to do, something that will help you on your path. So by reflecting on all this, your mind should get uplifted. You shouldn't feel stingy. You shouldn't feel doubtful. You should actually cultivate all those wholesome qualities in your mind in preparation for the offering. And while you are giving the offering, you should feel confident, you should feel happy, you should be convinced that this is a good thing to do, and you should feel good about yourself while doing this. And then after giving, you feel uplifted. So when you reflect back on what you just did, then you should again know that this was wholesome, this was good, and that you cultivated a lot of good qualities, and you should feel those good qualities in your mind. So as a donor, this is how you ensure that you get the most merit out of your gift. And on the side of the recipients, this is mostly a reflection for monastics. But anybody who receives a gift can think about this and recollect this. So how do they purify the offering? When the recipients are free of greed, hate, and delusion, or practicing to be free of them. So totally free of greed, hate, and delusion, obviously these are only arahants. And if you can find arahants to give your gift to, then that's great. It's just that arahants are really, really difficult to find nowadays. But you can still find people who are practicing to be free of greed, hate, and delusion. So basically, any sincere monastic should be practicing in this way towards arahantship, and most sincere lay people should also be practicing in a way towards arahantship, towards overcoming those mental defilements. So those kind of people can actually be found. And so as recipients, we should regularly reflect, are we still practicing in the proper way? Are we actually making progress on the path? Is our greed, hate, and delusion getting less? So that we can also ensure that we are a field of merit for the world, and that we do our part in order to make sure that the gift is the most beneficial when somebody supports us. And then the Buddha continues by saying, it's not easy to grasp the merit of such an offering by saying that this is the extent of their overflowing merit, overflowing goodness that nurtures happiness and is conducive to heaven, ripening in happiness and leading to heaven. And it leads to what is likable, desirable, agreeable to welfare and happiness. It's simply reckoned as an incalculable, immeasurable great mass of merit. It's like trying to grasp how much water is in the ocean. It's not easy to say how many gallons, how many hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons there are. It's simply reckoned as an incalculable, immeasurable great mass of water. In the same way, it's not easy to grasp the merit of such an offering. By saying that this is the extent of their overflowing merit, overflowing goodness that nurtures happiness and is conducive to heaven, ripening in happiness and leading to heaven. And it leads to what is likable, desirable, agreeable to welfare and happiness. It's simply reckoned as an incalculable, immeasurable great mass of merit. So this is the sutta that the Buddha gave on account of the encounter between Sariputta, Moggallana, and Nandamātā. There are a few verses also, which I am going to skip now because I'm conscious of time. And I think at this point, we should come towards the end of the talk. So one thing that I still want to point out is that now this morning we talked about Kuchuttara, the other chief lay disciple. Now we talked about Nandamātā. And we see how they're in some ways really, really very different. So Nandamātā is the head of a household. She's a fairly influential person. She has servants. She seems to have quite some wealth. Whereas on the other hand, Kuchuttara, she was a servant. And she was serving Queen Samavati and so on. And she was also disabled. So Nandamātā seems to be healthy. Kuchuttara seems to have been disabled. So in some ways, they are really, really very different. And especially when we look at all the 8 chief disciples, we see that this is a really, really diverse group of people. They come from all classes of society, for example. There are Brahmins, for example, Sariputta and Moggallana are both Brahmins. And it's possible that Khema could have been a Brahmin. So in her own words, in her own poem, in the Therigatha, there seems to be an indication that she might have been Brahmin. In the commentarial literature, she is said to have been a Khattiya, an aristocrat woman. So anyway, we have Brahmins there, that's clear. We also have Khattiyas, aristocrats, for example, Hataka of Alavi, whom we are talking about at some other point, one of the chief male disciples. And then we have people from the merchant class, such as Chitta the householder, whom we're talking about tomorrow. And we have people from the servant class. So we have all strata of society represented in these chief disciples. We have healthy people, we have disabled people, we have people of all kinds of skin colors, especially Moggallana and Upalavanna are described as having very darker skin, whereas Kema, for example, is described as having fairly light skin. So the group is just really, really diverse. And I think that is so important, and that is something that we should also rejoice in, because it's so important to have role models that are in some way similar to us. So people with all kinds of bodies, with all kinds of mental dispositions, can find a way to be in some way represented there, and can find a way to find role models there. And I think this diversity is really something that is very, very important. In modern sanghas, but also when we look at the sangha back in the time of the Buddha. And we should imagine them to be just one monolithic block, very kind of streamlined. They were really, really very diverse people. And that is very important, to have a wide range of diverse role models. But one other thing that we also see that they have in common is, for example, that they were very widely learned, that they had memorized a lot of teachings, and that they were very strong practitioners. So hopefully you found this session about Nandamātā inspiring. Hopefully there were some points that you can incorporate into your own practice. Hopefully you gained some kind of inspiration for your practice. And tomorrow we are talking about Chitta the householder, one of the chief male disciples. So hopefully you come back tomorrow morning. And at this point, I'm going to end my talk for today. And if you have any questions or comments, please type them in the live chat, and I will do my best to answer them if I can. So let's see if there are any questions. Shadow of Label says, Ayya's good at this, that I thought the screen was frozen. I'm assuming this refers to our Samadhi meditation. So, well, hopefully you didn't stare at me too much. Hopefully you had your eyes closed and did your own meditation. What Buddha Panya says, it's very good to study the biography of the Holy and Pure One. I agree. It's very important to study the stories of all the foremost bhikkhus and bhikkhunis and the laymen and laywomen. And I think to some extent for the bhikkhus, we're certainly doing that. For the bhikkhunis, we're doing it to a much lesser extent, but we are still doing it. And I think most people know that I have this series on Tuesday mornings where we are looking in a lot of detail into the lives of the ancient nuns, the ancient bhikkhunis. This is called the Foremost Theories of Old. We are having a series of 13 classes all throughout this Vassa season, this rains retreat season. But we're not looking that much at the laymen and the laywomen, I think. So that is why we are having this series of 4 talks about the 4 chief lay disciples. And if there's interest at some point, I think it would also be good to go through the lists of the foremost laymen and laywomen. So in the Anguttara Nikaya, we have those lists of 10 foremost laymen and 10 foremost laywomen. And it's also very interesting to study their stories and the foremost qualities that they had, and what kind of practices they did and how they lived their life in order to develop that particular foremost quality. And I think the stories of the lay people, the foremost lay people, are not that well known, especially in the Western world. And let's see. Somebody with a Sri Lankan name says, can I ask questions? Yes, of course. And they asked the question, why are we here? Why do we exist? And how to avoid existence? Well, usually we encourage people to ask questions on the topic. So the topic today is role models. If you want to ask general questions, then you can come back tomorrow. On Friday evenings, we have what is called Monk Chat. And during Monk Chat, you can ask general Dhamma questions. They don't have to be on topic. But for the Dhamma talks, we really encourage you to ask questions on the topic. So if you have questions about role models or the chief disciples, then you should ask that kind of question. So just very briefly, why are we here? Because of ignorance and craving, because we have delusions and defilements and they keep us in samsara. And how do we avoid existence? Well, by practicing the Buddha's path and by getting out of samsara. So practice the Noble Eightfold Path. And then hopefully you'll make the progression to arahantship and get out of rebirth. And Sunita says, I didn't know that the Buddha was clairvoyant. Do you try to practice or learn this? I know some people say this can be learned and taught. Well, this is a very common feature in the early Buddhist texts. Both the Buddha and many monks and nuns, and also a significant number of lay people had those psychic powers. Psychic powers are not the goal of the path at all. They have nothing to do with enlightenment. So there are plenty of arahants that did not have psychic powers, especially those who had a dominant wisdom quality and not a dominant samadhi quality. So you need to have very deep samadhi in order to develop psychic powers. And yes, this can be learned if you are so inclined, but you really, like, this is not the point of Buddhist practice, so don't really waste your time on this. Try to get rid of greed, hatred, and delusion. This is the main practice, purifying one's mind, overcoming the defilements, getting out of this round of rebirth, this wheel of samsara. That is the Buddhist path. So yes, psychic powers can be learned, including clairvoyance. Should you do it? Not really. It's a waste of time. So I do not see any other question so far. So maybe we can end here for today. And come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock if you're interested in the next session. Oh, somebody just left another comment. So Mary, hi Mary. I'm wondering if you are the Mary who also comes to Empty Cloud all the time. If it's you, then it's really nice to see you. If you're another Mary, then it's still nice to see you. And thanks for joining in. And she says, even though I've lived a very worldly life, I think we all should strive for all forms of spiritual perfection and try to become role models. Thank you for your talk. Yes, I agree. And in some way, I think we're all role models because when we practice the path for a little while, there will be people who are less experienced than us. And so we can try to guide them along a little bit and share the knowledge that we have. So there will always be people who are newer to the practice than us. And in that way, we can all be role models. And we also should this can also be like an inspiration for our practice because we know that in that way, we can help other people. And if we feel low in energy and we don't really want to practice one day, then we don't have the inspiration to do it for ourselves, maybe we can get inspiration by reflecting that we're also helping other people by doing this. And Gurgles the Grillo says, could you please share some words on how role models inspired or supported and still support in your path? Yeah, he's here or they, he, she, they, I don't know. Corrected to on your path. So Well, I think role models are really important. If we don't have a role model, then it's difficult to imagine how we can develop on the path. If there's nobody that's more advanced, then we have this doubt: is it really feasible? Can this be done? Can it be done by somebody like me? If we don't have a role model that's similar to us, we think, oh, maybe these other people can do it, but people who are like me can't do it. People who have my gender, or who have my kinds of defilements, or who have my kind of disability, or my kind of whatever problem we might have, or we might perceive that we have, we doubt ourselves. But if there is somebody that's similar to us, and that is more advanced on the path, then we can like develop some faith in ourselves and think that we also will be able to make that kind of progress, and then we can find the energy to actually do the practice and make that progress. If we are crippled by doubt in our abilities, then it's very difficult to find the energy to actually make the progress. So how did role models inspire me? They inspired me in that way. Just meeting good people, meeting good practitioners, being around people who have good quality. So sometimes we think that the role model needs to be perfect in every respect. But sometimes we see people that are quite imperfect in some respects, but they have outstanding qualities that we are missing in some other areas. For example, somebody could have a very, very strong metta practice, but their monastics and maybe their vinaya is quite flawed, but they have very, very strong metta, or they have very, very strong compassion. And then we don't look at the things that we perceive as a little bit not so inspiring, but we look at the aspects of that person where they are more advanced than us, where we can learn from them. Or some other people might not have very strong metta. They might come across as being a little bit grumpy, but they have a huge amount of knowledge in the Buddha's teaching. So then we look at that side and aspire to learn from them in that respect, and to become similar to them with that particular quality. So we shouldn't expect people to be totally amazing all around. Nobody is perfect. And even arahants still have their own personality quirks. And even arahants were criticized by some other people for certain things that they were doing, even though they were not doing it out of defilements, obviously, since they were arahants. Still, nobody's perfect, and like nobody is totally without criticism. Even the Buddha himself was criticized from time to time by people. So we don't look at the sides of people that we find uninspiring, but we look at those qualities that we actually feel that we are lacking and that we want to develop. So in that way, we can be inspired by other people, even if we have a fault-finding mind and sometimes also see their bad points. And that was the last question for today. So we're going to finish now. Come back tomorrow at 8 o'clock for the talk about Chitta, the householder, if you want. Otherwise, have a nice evening. And we will end today with 3 sadhus. So feel free to join in if you like. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And see you all next time.